How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. It's been a big week.
It's been a big week.
Yeah, introspection, reflection, just growing and being brutally honest with oneself does that.
What caused the circumstance where you have to be brutally honest with yourself? Or is that just something you do every day?
No, well, it's something I thought I did every day. This
Yeah.
is, I think, where we're all at, and I feel like the younger we are, the more this is true. There's a saying I heard, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but they said when you're rationalizing something, that's when you need to look at what you're rationalizing, because that's likely where you're dishonest with yourself. And you know, when you've got all the excuses for doing things, you know,
excuses are really an interesting.
It's because this or it's because that. I don't know.
It's not because of just you. Usually, you feeling pain.
Exactly. And what's the opposite of excuses?
Yeah,
it's openness and listening to other people and running through their scenarios and entertaining them and trying them on like a name. Mm-hmm. So I think this week the biggest realization was like my childhood was like, yeah, I got a good childhood, and then I thought, yeah, no, it's kind of bumpy. There's kind of those little nuances in emotion that leave you kind of with programming that you then take forward in life. And then you hit a certain age and you're like, I thought I'd be further ahead by now. What's going on? What's holding me back?
Further ahead in what way?
Financially, career. I've done well acting-wise in Australia. Here I'm just sort of chugging along, waiting for that moment to, you know, even really get in front of theatrical.
Yeah.
I'm not getting the theatrical traction that I would like to get. So, you know, everyone eventually is going to look where all of your experience starts, and that's with the self.
Yes. I mean, you're talking about you were thinking about your childhood. Like, what have prompted that introspection?
Well, I've been having some things pop up in around my hip area, like a nerve, sensitive nerve. They call it a pudendal neuralgia. It's a hell of a nuisance.
Who calls it that?
Yeah, right. Doctors.
Pudendal?
Pudendal.
Oh,
with
pudendal.
A D.
Okay.
Pudendal neuralgia. It's neuralgia, like neuro, and algia as in sick. But basically, it's a irritated nerve. You can get neuralgia in any of your nerves, but this one's the pudendal neuralgia, which is in your, you know, sort of buttock area mostly. Yeah. So sitting is a nuisance. Hence my funky thing right there. Just trying to, you know,
this
find
is
that place.
You're allowed demand spread when you have pudendal neuralgia.
So when we're usually hanging out, you see me standing a lot. So that's why. It's just until that neuralgia goes away, you've got discomfort. So I kind of have been going through doctors for about 1 to 2 years, and you know, short of getting a needle in there and numbing your nerve, there's no solution, or a needle in there and shocking you. And I'm like, this is a bit crazy. So I was like, all right, let's look at the energetic side of this. And I went straight to the root chakra and looked at the root chakra, and it talks about stability. It talks about being quick to frustration or anger, which I have had times where that's happened, and feeling like you're always searching for something but not really sure what. Yeah. I feel like a lot of us have probably got that one.
Well, it's this anxiety, this semi-aimlessness of like, I should be somewhere else, right? Well, and that's the most anxious you can be. It's like you don't belong, and you just have to tell yourself and understand that where you are right now is where you belong.
Well, that's the goal.
Yeah. How do you deal with situations where you're talking to people about, you know, the self and your understanding of it, and they are not ready?
That's a learning which I'm moving quicker recently with. We're in a place where free will rules. This planet, you get to do whatever you want, unless you're in a country where unluckily you may not be able to. Right. But by and large, we all have a choice in every moment. So for me to presume that someone needs advice is presumption. It's arrogant, it's cocky. So a lot of times some people will be going through some things, and you've gently got to find your way to, oh, have you tried this? Oh, have you heard of that? And just suggestions. And just the reaction you get to those suggestions usually gives you what you need. Yeah. So if someone's presenting resistance or, you know, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, no, I've heard about that. Yeah. Oh, no, a friend told me about that. Yeah, it's good. Then you just leave it alone. Yeah. So.
Because it's something that I think the more I talk about some of these more spiritual subjects is you run into people sometimes who can make this into their new ego, into their new thing, and they're doing it the right way.
Yes.
and they've discovered something that other people don't understand or know, and they're like in a indirect way holding it over other people, and that I think turns a lot of people off to being more mindful. You know?
It's a cannabis junkie using heroin to say, hey, look, I quit cannabis, right? So basically, you can't really... The end goal of what kids call woke, or, you know, that thing that everyone seems to be chasing right now, the end goal of it, nobody's talking about, is humility. You can't go around preaching and telling people how they should be. You only can do that with self.
Yes.
And if you're not starting with self, then you're not helping anyone, really.
How did you get started thinking about your life in these terms? This is not something, maybe it's something that's started at childhood, but it's...
Yeah, it did.
It did.
It did. 15, 16. There was a crystal store that opened in a shopping center near me, and I was like, damn, dragons and amethyst. And I was like, this is cool. And they had lots of like cool sculptures because I used to draw dragons. I realized now, looking back, the dragon interest led me to that store and connecting with that, and it's just carried ever since.
Yeah. And dragons are just cool.
Aren't they? I feel like they were just dinosaurs, and they've just kind of gone through folklore. They existed. There were flying dinosaurs, so we know that for a fact.
Yeah, we do. It's fun to think about how history, how we just have... The stories we tell have just grown and grown, and they started as just these little lies.
Is we don't know
that we passed around.
We don't know that they started as lies, and more, there's a lot of... they call it metaphysics, and they call it pseudoscience, and it's usually Western scientific people who are calling it that. But it's counterintuitive to me, because Western science method, if you're being scientific, you can't rule out possibility.
Right.
If something is hypothetical or something has probable cause, then you have to look at it. That's the scientific method. I mean, you don't have to, but if you got the money and the time.
Yeah.
So for them to be like, pseudoscience, just because we don't have the proof for things doesn't mean that it's not real. And that's what we're coming up against right now on the planet. We've got this big, gentle, peaceful war between Western science, who is saying, well, it's not scientific, but they're presuming that they know everything about science. And we all know that we are souls. I feel like even atheists go, well, I may not believe that I'll go anywhere after death, but I still know that my unique experience is somehow this weird magical force which makes a chunk of skin and bones dance its way through life. So
there's something special there. There's something.
And
there's a something.
And science doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
So we don't have a meter. We can check electricity. We can put the ammeter onto a cable and check the flow and the current, but we can't check what the Chinese call qi.
Yeah.
So until science
or
knows...
Shakti.
Or Shakti.
Yes.
Well, that's the feminine, right?
Oh, is that what it is? I'm still learning. That's the point of me doing the show.
Well,
Shakti, so qi is more masculine?
Well, qi is you. It's the life force. It is your spark individuated from the all, if you will. Shakti is the divine feminine energy, which plays a part in all. But it's that divine feminine, so it goes hand in hand with men being more open about their feelings, and not carrying the toxic masculine and their arms out and driving a truck because my friends will think I'm gay if I don't, and that sort of stuff, and just being like real with the fact that I have pain and I'm a human.
Yeah. So. Okay, so but back to what we were talking about. You started this as a teenager.
Yeah.
This journey.
It was. You feel like it's accidental, and then you look back and you're like, I was always headed here. So a book on cleaning your house with Feng Shui was probably the first real dabble, and then I was like, this is cool. And I tried it out, and I was like, yeah, I do feel better. So now anytime I'm like unable to get any work done, I clean.
Yeah.
But then it just sort of progressed from there, and it's probably been about the last... Actually, remarkably, it's sad Audible are not sponsoring this podcast. Maybe you can pitch to them. But they have kind of changed my life, because they've given me the ability to go through a minimum of one book per month. And sometimes I'll go through 3 or 4 books per month, and all pertaining to psychology, metaphysics, physics, quantum mechanics, what else? Self-help sometimes, but I find that it's that same thing where someone's telling you what you should do.
Right.
So unless they're tried and tested...
Self-help's interesting, because I think people categorize a lot of spirituality into that, and it's become this kind of bad word a little bit, but like spirituality is help.
It is.
All of it
It
is.
is.
Because it's dealing with the self, dealing with the soul and spirit. So, I've been thinking a lot about trying to find a new way to describe it. I don't know what it is. Because spirituality freaks some people out. Self-help, people scoff at.
I've got the answer.
You do?
Yeah. And
okay.
choose not to label it.
Yeah.
The reason being is psychologically, if you say you're a Democrat and I'm a Republican, immediately now we have an imaginary line. You're on one side and I'm on the other. It's called label, right? So I label something in my mind, I give it a definition, and for me, I call myself an anti-labelista, if you will. And when it comes down to it, I'm doing my best to not apply a judgment to who someone is based on what they choose to subscribe or believe.
Yeah, it's the not labeling thing is something I've run into this idea in the past year or so of just that idea that the beauty of anything gets reduced once we give it a name.
Exactly. Do you ever wonder if people see colors the same way as you? I feel like a lot of kids have that one.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I wonder.
I see blue, but does he see my blue?
And you're blue. And also what's interesting is like people are colorblind, but they still see colors.
Yes. And they actually have the gift of increased motion awareness. So camouflage doesn't always work on them.
Ah.
So colorblind people in the army are a very valuable asset, especially in wartime.
Especially in water.
Wartime.
Oh, wartime.
Yeah, it's my accent. I'm not completely American yet.
What do you aim to do with your collected knowledge? Because you can clearly communicate it very well. There is this vocabulary that goes along with the journey of self. You have these tools you've been clearly researching, reading voraciously. Is there something that you're aiming to do? Do you have a purpose with this?
We're getting deep here, man. When it comes to self-realization is realizing exactly what you are, and not as a skin suit, but as the entity that comes and is born into a skin suit. I like to call it this human body that we get to pretend is ours, and sometimes pretend too hard and cause wars and fights and all sorts of crap. So the goal for me is, in order to help anyone, I have to get there myself. And my goal is to get there as quick as possible without causing nerve damage. Because if you fill yourself with that enlightened energy too quickly, it can really do some damage to your nerves. Like true.
Do you think that's why this is happening to you?
Possibly. So I feel like.
So how can I track that? Like, how does it do nerve damage?
Well, so you're shifting density in a sense. You're moving through your own levels of third density. And for anyone out there who doesn't know what density is, it's a term that if you start listening to the channeled texts, that a lot of the energies that are on the other side of whatever this is pump through channels who are hypnotically, creating space for these words to come through.
Right.
They always talk about this being the third density, and there's many, many densities, and our goal is to evolve and get enlightened. So for me to actually be able to move to that point, that's the only way I can really affect change, and that's because of harmonic resonance. We all exist as frequential beings. When you look at what an electron does around any molecular matter, it dances with a very particular frequency. Ask any scientist, they'll be like, yeah, okay, you got me there. So if you're starting to change your frequency, what you do through this work is you actually change your cellular frequency. You change your soulistic frequency. Everything about you starts to shift, and through that you broadcast. And when you broadcast, you don't need to speak. I think you knew it about me before we even talked. You just sort of know with some people, you're like, something about this guy.
Well, yeah, the frequency thing, I first want to talk, to circle back to channel text, just so people, because you were saying some things that I don't know if everyone will follow, but basically what I understand channel text to be is, in a way, it's like there is this consciousness that is somewhere not in this reality that is getting a message through people, and they write books.
Yes.
And there's a lot of these, and there have been a lot of these for a long time, and people can say they're angels or God, but it's a very interesting thing, and I've learned about them recently, and it's they speak differently than the men and women who they get channeled through, and it all sounds very kooky, fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But
the level of intelligence behind the message and the words that they use, they scream intelligence beyond a human.
Yeah.
It's hard to go, a human is talking these words.
And even what the cool thing to me is, even if you don't believe that it is actually being channeled, when you read it, you go, oh well, like this isn't hurting anything. Yeah. This is all helpful, truthful. This feels true.
It feels familiar.
It does feel familiar. So it's one of those things that's like, if you're kind of skeptical about it, at least even investigating it, you can see the merit. And because I'm constantly looking to be a bridge, because I think I was coming from a more skeptical place, and I'm definitely all in now and learning about all of this stuff. And so it is, channel text is one of those things that you're like, that right off the bat sounds kooky. Yeah. But to me, it's just always like, okay, well, what's the next level of that? Because there are kooky ideas that hurt people, and that are like,
they're called cults.
Yeah, cults and some sort of weird medicines and stuff like that are actually hurtful. But then there's also an aspect of this that is very helpful and very true and feels real and true beyond and familiar, beyond something that would necessarily just come out of that person, So anyways, that's kind of what I come to believe or understand what the channeling is. Is that true?
I mean, to make it really simple, somebody goes into a hypnotic state or a meditative state, and they either wait for a long time if they need to get aligned, or sometimes it just comes through instantly. There's a famous guy named Paul Selig, and he's gaining more and more momentum. The books that have come through him since 2009, I strongly recommend that anyone listening to this, half interested, get the first in the series, search the author, and then go through all of them in your own time. And the first one's called I Am the Word. And a lot of people have heard about I am this and I am that chanting.
Yeah.
This is a different thing. This is literally like listening to that voice on the other side, talking very lovingly and caringly to you through Paul, for you. And, I'm on to book 4 or 5, I don't even know, Book of Mastery at the moment. And I feel like I've made such large strides as I'm making each step, and then I get to book 4 and I'm like, I've only just begun. This is exciting and enjoyable, and every time I turn it on, it's like sitting with a warm hug of familiarity and love. It's nothing but unbridled love coming through the voice, and Paul's voice is great. I would love to meet the guy one day and just shake his hand, because he's just like us. He's got his own stuff.
Yeah.
But he's got this gift of channeling, and sometimes as they're narrating, they'll be like, Paul, you're getting in the way. You're having fears. You're doing this. Paul, I'm asking you to step out of the room while we continue channeling, so to speak. And it's just brilliant, because the way that any of these channeled texts speak, they're trying to fit incredibly large concepts in space-time and multidimensionality through the limited vocabulary, the slow little trickling string of tic-tacs laid on the sidewalk that is the English vocabulary. And sometimes the concepts, just to explain the concept, can take chapters.
Yeah.
So, but I do recommend it, because just listening to the way that they speak, terms like probability, possibility, or possibility, probability, differentiated from each other, or space-time versus time-space, or love-light versus light-love, it can't help but give you meditation for, why did they say them differently?
Yeah.
Which provokes your own growth in that field of contemplation, which is really where this is all at. The more you contemplate higher concepts, the more you ascend.
Yeah, even the word meditation is something that I've just until recently really understood what it means, because I think a lot of people, when they have a quiet moment or a contemplative moment, they're thinking, oh, this is meditation. But technically, and why it is you have to sit in silence, not always silence, I mean, just sit and quiet your mind and release the story that you're going through in your mind. Because meditation, true meditation, is just being aware that you are aware. Being conscious of having a conscious. That's the deepest root of everything. And that is, I'm reading this book by, I don't know if you heard of Michael Singer. Yeah, I'm reading this book called The Untethered Soul, and he talks.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, I do know that book. Yes.
Incredible book, and it's just like he opens it up with like, "Who are you?" You know, and it's like, well,
that's
I'm
the one question,
right. Well, that's the biggest question. It's like, oh, well, I'm Brad Gage. I'm a comedian, actor. I live in Los Angeles. No. Beyond that, oh, I'm from Wisconsin. I have red hair. I have freckles. No. Beyond that, you are. That is all an experience that's happening, and that's all a persona.
Labels.
You are exactly. You are what you really are is the consciousness watching all of that behind your thoughts, behind your brain, behind your body, behind it all. Looking through a window and just watching it all happen, and that's who you are. And when I read that, I'm like, boy, is that wild! And of course, it feels very real.
Yeah.
I don't think it's hard to really argue with that.
Yeah.
Because we are conscious of ourselves. So,
even the sensation of touch is only really occurring in your brain.
Right.
So, how do we really know we're here?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
You just know.
Well, do you? Do you? That's the question.
Do you think we're here right now, Ian?
I haven't really made my way to that. And one thing that I think is bigger than that is that it doesn't matter. It's of no consequence, as you'll hear frequently.
Great point.
It's of no consequence. You have work to do when you come here.
Yeah.
And that work is learning through experience. It's through pain. It's through love. It's through highs. It's through lows. And just being with that is everything.
Yeah.
And not in a way that is laden with judgment and laden with fault and blame. There's a lot of words which I really buck from my life. Blame through the words of it's your fault or whose fault is it? The need, the should, they're all obligatory words. They create obligation. Oh, I should do that. Try is another one where people say, oh, look, I'll try. Well, what? Just don't. Let's call a spade a spade. If you're going to use the word try, why don't we just say, fuck it?
Well, yeah.
Just stop there because you've already said that you're not going to do it. Yeah. That's what the word try
Yoda
is.
was right.
Oh, totally.
I mean, yeah, it's...
Don't even get me started on Star Wars.
Star Wars, the original stuff.
Yeah,
great ideas.
There's some stuff in there, man. That was very much...
There's a reason why it connects with everybody.
Slow disclosure of high concepts through that movie. That's
Absolutely.
why it's resonated with so many people.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think Jedis are?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and what is the good and bad forces?
There's a reason they dress like monks. Just saying.
The best thing about the Star Wars universe, like even now, is it does open the imagination to what is actually possible. Like anything.
Yeah.
And even to go back to what we were saying, asking like why we are here, right? It's like, are we here right now? Yeah, it doesn't matter. I love that. But also, I'm thinking a lot about like the meaning of life. Why? I think the answer is it's silly to even ask. There doesn't need to be a purpose. The purpose is being.
You are a creator.
Yeah.
That is the reason. So there's one creative force, and that's love. All right. If you have a dog, and that dog before you was, just around other dogs, that dog's consciousness is part of the collective consciousness. It's a hive mind. This happens with a lot of animals. The more you read these channeled texts, you'll hear this pop up a lot. So when that individuated dog is pulled from its pack and lives in a house, and you start to call it a name, and you start to give it love, and you teach it things, and it learns things, all of a sudden it's not existing from its primal. It's not just functioning from this place of DNA programmed primal behavior, almost organic robotics, if we will. You've got this animal that's now starting to receive consciousness. So through the act of consciousness being gifted through love, that animal's own consciousness is rising. So, and you can see this with dogs. When you first get them from the kennel that you've adopted them from, hopefully you adopted them. Yeah. Breeders are bad. And I say that as a dog trainer as well. Not all breeders are bad, but there are some cowboys out there that need to be shut down. But
there's enough dogs that need to be adopted.
So many.
Don't need to breed more.
And with a good trainer, you can make a good dog out of any dog.
Yeah.
But basically, that is the purpose here. We are here to not only rise our own consciousness, because there's many lifetimes that I'm sure you're starting to be aware of that don't just exist on this plane, on this planet. There's other places in this solar system and universe and there's plenty of other galaxies out there. Everyone's saying, oh, well, we haven't found life. Do you think NASA's told you everything? That's the question I want you to just meditate on. Do you think NASA and the American government have told you everything? If the answer is yes, then cool. I have no words for you. If the answer is no, then I will say dig deeper. There's plenty of information available. And it's funny that, people talk about conspiracy theories. They put spiritualism and conspiracy theory into this same bucket, and it's all woo-woo and ha-ha. But the reality is that when you start digging deeper, we are actually having quantum mechanics start to prove these things over 100 years ago, almost, I think it was. Niels Bohr and his collective of people, they were doing this in 1925, I think.
Doing what?
I think the Copenhagen interpretation was the theory of quantum mechanics, as they agreed to it. It was 1925. And what quantum mechanics tells us is that entanglement is real. So two particles, once,
right.
I'm not sure if the word is aligned or harmonized. Once they're entangled. And they can be, don't even get me started, I'll keep it really light, but there is evidence that the entangled particles can even be separated through space and time,
right,
and still be
That's been proven recently, right? Did they not?
Not as recently as you think.
But didn't they teleport an atom that was existent here and then to a space station?
Yeah.
Didn't that just happen? I mean, maybe it happened longer ago, but
the journals were released.
Yeah,
when you get journals released, may not be when the technology was learned.
Right.
There's a lot of money.
Because they need to figure out what they're going to do with it.
Well, let's be real. Have you got a lot of money for military in this country?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a certain point when you look at that trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that they assign each year. That's literally each year. And you go, wait, how much are the planes? How much are the people? And you do the maths and you're like, wait, how many people and planes do we have? And you do the maths and you're like, then where does all the extra go? This is published information, not to mention the money that goes missing. So when it comes to science, you've kind of got a split in the world. You've got Western public science, and then there's science that's happening that's benefiting probably us eventually. Just like I think it was this last 6 months, the Navy just put a patent out for a free energy machine that a lot of people don't know about. It's a basic fusion capacitor.
You're clearly doing a lot of research kind of outside the bounds of the news cycle that most people are ingesting.
Yeah.
What, honestly, last time we talked when we had lunch, I left really for the first time in a long time thinking about, I haven't really questioned as much how and where I get the information that I do. And I think that clearly it's been proven to us that what we ingest is not always true.
Well, true, you need to really be clear on the term true.
Sure.
True is what you choose to be true.
Sure.
So
I guess real? I don't know what would be the word we should use.
Well, I like to use the word fact.
Factual.
There's... Yes. When something's proven to be factual, and keep in mind, like, because of what quantum uncertainty has proven, we don't even know that fact is fact. We can think that molecules are made up of certain things, and then we dig deeper and we're like, wait, there's something else. Mm-hmm. And quantum uncertainty, basically the principle that they've gone with is that no matter where we look, the act of expectation is what creates the thing we find.
Right.
Because we didn't know it was there until we went looking, and then we find something, and it feels like we can go on endlessly.
We just keep finding. Yeah. Right. We just keep finding stuff. Yeah. It is kind of crazy because we're always breaking records. We're also always finding new stuff.
Yeah.
And so
Usain Bolt. I mean, dude, like we thought we were fast. He comes out, and you're like, what?
Yeah. That was another thing that I did get from our lunch was you were saying. The expectation, yes. Just the expecting that there is more to be discovered, because of course there is.
Expectation is, I'm really glad you brought that up, because it's a whole world of meditation for people that most people don't realize the part that expectation plays in their life. Expectation, when coupled with typicality in one to be a victim, can be a really dangerous thing, because they're like, expectation, disappointment, expectation, disappointment. Whereas if you don't have that, expectation can be the creative force. It can be you going, I'm going to get that job, and literally every cell in your body is now polarized towards getting that job. And it's not just the cells in your body, it's the whole energetic aura and magnetic field that we all have, which they can measure with science. And that level of expectation can be massive in people's lives, but it's like a little weapon that you need to know how to use it.
Yeah.
And not couple it with something that's going to eat you up. You can point it away from you, or you can point it at you as a weapon. So,
how do you do with that weapon?
Well, this is a thing. I am in a phase. I'm very aware of my 7-year cycles. If I look back through my life, those 7-year cycles, they literally line up to the date.
Starting even when you were just 7 years old, or more of an adult?
Yeah, there was a lot of bullying leading up to the year 7, and then from 7 through to 14, I really grew to toxic, masculine-wise, learn to protect myself.
Right.
It's just where I grew up. There was a lot of bullying. There was a lot of homophobia. I'm not gay, but everyone thought I was. And sometimes it didn't matter whether you were or you weren't. They were going to call you the faggot and beat you up anyway.
Yeah.
So it's been school of hard knocks going through that. 14 through 21, I was like smoking drugs and smoking cigarettes and like just, kind of going off the rails while going to school, somehow managing to make it work. And at 21, I quit cigarettes and changed in a new direction. Was like, yeah, let's get back on this. 21 through 28, I sort of started with a long-term relationship, and then that sort of ended around 25. And then going through 27, like I really learned who I was. That's the point. 27 is where Saturn returns. Like if you Google that, you'll see it in all the astrology sites. But Saturn returns is where you really start to go, all right, well, what is this? Who am I? Where am I about? Mm-hmm. And from 27 through to 35, it was just a really great time. And now I'm in this place where I know my journey. And my journey is to just keep learning more and more and more of this. And that for me is just reading everything. I read a ridiculous amount, both in audio and Kindle and web pages. And my Safari reading list is just chock full of things that I just get to when I can.
Yeah.
So the goal is learn. And then when you find new things, triangulate. Go, this is a great concept. I'm not going to just listen to someone and go, okay. Like find out, is there more available out there for this? And it does take work, but at the same time, the triangulation can sometimes come down to finding one person who you trust. And there are these people out there who I've chosen to trust, and I'm not going to ever promote that anyone else choose to trust people. Do your own work, but once you hear someone sharing information that you feel to be valuable, listen, let it vibrate, find what has resonance with you.
Right.
And when I say resonance, you can go into string theory and quantum, in physics and quantum metaphysics. String theory literally talks about dancing lights of strings being the basic architecture behind all of this. And these strings harmonize through vibration. We know everything vibrates. Mm-hmm. So what it comes down to is, well, when you have a truth, that truth has a very specific frequency.
Right.
And that frequency is what you choose to harmonize with. So if you're aggressive and like listening to angry music, you'll find people who are aggressive and they'll just magnetize to you, and you'll have friends. And then you start to go out of that phase and you're like, you know what, I just want to go out and help people. Those people will magnetize to you. So what you choose to be is what you're choosing to bring to you. And when I said before we have an electromagnetic field, it is literal when I say that you are electromagnetically drawing people to you. This planet has an electromagnetic field, and they don't want us to really investigate that. The people who have the scientific labs that are not in public view very much don't want us to study harmonics. They don't want us to study electromagnetism. They don't want us to study space-time in a relational sense.
Why don't they want us?
Because that's where your answers are. That's where your answers are.
And then this is like the government not having control. Like
I'm going to stop you there.
Okay, sure. Who is the
when you're outside of America, people go, "Oh, America this, America that." Everyone's got their gripe with America. But I always say to people when I'm outside of America, who are you talking about? Are you talking about the American president? Are you talking about the Senate?
Yeah.
Are you talking about some guy who lives in Massachusetts or some guy who lives in Oregon who've probably got very different viewpoints on the world? You can't just bundle everything under a word because it just becomes a label.
Yeah.
You've got to actually choose to really pinpoint where you're coming at with this. What I'm talking about is we know that there's doors that we're not allowed access to. Is that fair? Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, clearly that's and there's a trust because you have to, because it's not because you have to, but because it's easier to.
It's all you're left with.
Yeah, that's all you're to trust that they're taking care of you, that we have a system that is taking care of us and keeping us as safe as can be. You know, you hold a lot more power being an arrow instead of a target.
Yeah.
And I think...
Talk more about that.
Well,
I need to know where you're coming at.
So it's just, realizing that if you're just absorbing everything and not wondering where it's coming from or who's saying it and why, which is the most important question behind anything, why?
Yeah.
Why? Like, everybody knows now why the dairy industry is so enveloped, why cheese is such a big part of the food pyramid.
It's addictive.
It's addictive. It's got casomorphin in it, but also it was this surplus after the war, and they had to get it. And then why there's so much plastic goods is because the oil companies are making more money off of more different types of goods that aren't just cars. And it's always money. So it's like, okay, so I didn't used to think about any of this stuff. I just kind of trusted that we are headed in a good direction. Yeah. And in many ways, we still are. Just things we veer off.
Yeah.
Because of greed, because of ego, because of
laziness. I'll say
laziness is a big part of it for sure.
So when we think about cattle in that dairy industry, you think about them just grazing in the field. They got the grass, they got the cows, they got the calves, they're cool, they're just hanging. That's where we go wrong as people. When we don't look over the fence and go, why is this guy feeding us all this hay? Why are we going through here? Okay, they're putting those things down there and milking us. Okay, that seems harmless, right? But eventually there's that point where you go, all right, this is terminal for a cow at least. For us, what we should be doing as a people is just not drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak. That Brian Jonestown reference. Mm-hmm. And they trusted Brian Jones the way that we trust the government, the FDA, the CDC, and these are government agencies. So historically in America, we go, all right, well, a testing agency or a control agency will have our best interests. But there's a lot of evidence for healthy foods, even just something as simple as the recommended daily intake for vitamin C in this country is so low, it's probably going to create sickness in you.
I do wonder, though. I mean, it's not all bad.
No, it's definitely not all bad.
Because the nice thing is these regulators, FDA, they do important stuff, but clearly there is money somewhere influencing them like everything else.
But it's not it's not covert. We have a system in the States where lobbying, basically you're begging for interest as a politician. You need that money to go out there and, rally the troops. That feels criminal to me. I've come from a country where the money for those budgets come from either the electorate or from the actual nation's resources, and they don't spend ridiculous amounts of money. They spend what they need to, and then they're done. Here, lobbying is all the way throughout the process.
Yeah,
and it's never called bribery. It should be called bribery. It's bribery when you pay someone to have your interest be promoted or looked after. That is bribery, definitively. But we call it lobby, and then all of a sudden, all of America is cool with that. And when I got to America, I was like, this place is great. There's all this bad rap that this place gets around the world, and I'm Australian and half French, and both of those countries have their, those Americans moments. But you come here and it's not the people. It's not the people at all. The people are good, hardworking people who trust their government. And it's just that moment where if people can go, wait, how do we change this? How do we get people we trust? And do you know who Sean King is?
No.
All right. If you don't know who Sean King is, Google Action PAC. So this guy, he's out of New York and he hears things that are just injustices, and he has the following to make things happen. There's a guy on death row in Texas at the moment, Rodney Reed, and he's started...
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah. So Sean King, he's trying to basically get people who are for positive change into the Senate. And the thing with...
Well, the PAC, that's a political action committee? Is that
I believe. So basically...
but he's using it for good instead of...
He's rallying the troops. Yeah. He's saying, let's do this. Let's get all of America behind this, or as many people as we can, to basically say we're misrepresented. It's... The founding fathers said that the church will not influence government in this country. That's the furthest thing from the truth. And it's not that the church is a bad thing. It's just that it shouldn't be applying, because if for that to be fair, if Christian or Catholic, if those denominations are choosing what's right for the country based on their values, then when do the Muslims get their choice? When do the Hindus get their choice? How do we make this a democracy like we're sold that this is? Mm-hmm. So it's an ironic situation where it's not democratic. Yeah, it's a republic, but it's a corporate arrangement. It's all about the money, and we're not hiding it. Yet most people in America are not focusing on, this is completely broken.
Because it's easier not to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, clearly you research this a lot. You like to talk about it a lot. Do you run? I mean, I love it.
Only with people who like to talk about it with me.
But how do you deal with situations where these topics come up and people naysay all of it, or they call you crazy or whatever, because when it is like these topics are not talked about that much. No. People maybe don't want to face the work that goes behind
They should question why they don't want to talk about it. And this is the thing that I put a really humble outcry to all Americans, is to say, why don't I feel that I can question authority? When did that start? Why don't I feel that I can question the government? When did that start? And usually for most kids, it starts with, I pledge allegiance to the United States and blah, blah. I mean, for me, I'm not knocking the United States, but this is something that you also see in North Korea. I pledge allegiance to Kim Jong, whoever the fuck is at the helm at that point in time. There's always some Kim Jong someone.
Yeah.
But
there's a level of nationalism going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, something that everyone should study is they have proven, and it's funny that this was known so long ago, but if you have a child from 0 to 7, give me that child from 0 to 7, and I will have a dedicated follower for life. So when are we getting that first Pledge of Allegiance? How old were you when you do that at school?
Oh, I'm sure it was 6.
6,
yeah.
So you're getting in just at that point, right? So patriotism is a very confusing subject. And I think patriotism is great. Love America, absolutely. But question what America is. Is it the government? Is it the flag? Is it the military budget? Is it the missing military budget?
Yeah. Or is the people or the republic? Yeah.
Is it the oil? When you say, what is America? You'll actually start to question, well, what is it that I'm patriotic to? And being patriotic to your people is everything. I am all for that. I'm all for this amazing nation. But being all for those people means you have to question how it's being run, because it's not being run for those people. And anyone who can proudly call himself an American should be going, well, as an American, am I for the people or am I for some of the people? What's your version of America? Because I feel like now is the time for us to start having that discussion, because we've gone through 4 years now. We're on the helm of the next 4 years. It's all about to go in a certain direction.
Yeah. It's just a lovely reminder talking with you about just asking more questions.
Ask the questions.
Asking more questions. Yeah. And it's hard. And that's it. The laziness. It's
not hard.
Well, okay, you're right. And this is good. It's not hard.
It's not hard.
Some people think it is hard.
It's uncomfortable. And I'm going to quote that one. That one's from Barbara Stanny. She's amazing. She has a book called Overcoming Under-Earning, which everyone else should read as well. But she talks about change is not hard, it's uncomfortable. And it absolutely is uncomfortable. Yes. This is not a comfortable conversation.
And this is applicable to everything in your life.
Exactly.
Any sort of change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We talked before about it all feeling doom and gloom, and I really want to clear that up, because I definitely have not headed off in a, oh my God, it's doom and gloom.
Right.
Through learning so much, you get to see how much you can do. And it counts. Each single person being here, each one of us knows that we're important. We do. It's not some delusional psychotropic thing that happens in our brain with some endorphin release when whatever. Western science is always ready to just poo-poo things away. There's a reason that you're here. And I think every single person listening to that knows that there is a reason they're here. They knew it when they were a kid, and they know it now. And that journey is your journey. And all you have to do, if you really want to break everything I've talked about into a really simple format, stop judging other people. If you catch yourself looking at someone else and going, oh my God, look at that person, or they cut you off in traffic, you're like, oh, this guy, he did that thing. Yeah. He did that thing to me. How dare he? So pulling judgment out actually leaves you free to love. It leaves you in a space of openness, and this stuff will naturally creep in. So I always say start with that judgment. And if you've got any propensity to be a victim, tackle that as well. Those two big things leave you in a very different place. And be honest with yourself. Like, be honest with yourself about those things. Do I judge people? And am I a victim? Mm-hmm. Do I get hurt when people say things?
Yeah, judgment's interesting because you're not helping yourself by judging people. You're not helping other people, and we are so good at generalizing.
Yes.
To compartmentalize people.
We're trained to do that.
Yeah, we're trained to. But every time you do that, because you are no different than any other person. I mean, you are special, but you are not that different from them. You are generalizing yourself.
The better way to say that is you are one with all.
You are one, exactly. We're all in this together, and so you generalize someone else, you're generalizing at least a part of yourself.
Exactly.
And you're not general.
No.
Everyone is so specific because we all are. That's why we are all one, why we are all the same. And so it's celebrating, having reverence for yourself is having reverence for other people.
And the fun little thing too is, like, anytime you judge someone, that's the thing that you don't like about yourself.
Right, of course. It's always a reflection. Yeah, anytime it's a judgment, anytime you're picking something apart, it's always...
I mean,
because if you're okay with it, then you won't be bothered by it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Iain, what is the most important thing in your life?
Oof. It's very easy to say my wife and my dog and my cats, but...
Those are good and real.
I think... I mean, truthfully, it's love, but outside of that, just presence to explore vulnerability and dissect existing programming in this skin suit, this organic robot that I get to wear through life. There's the mind, body, spirit we always hear, and I try to claim myself as the spirit, and my body will fight against me. My mind, well... my intellectual, egoistic, whatever part of that brain is that tells you, oh, did you leave the oven on? That part fights against me a lot as well. And making them all find a balance is hugely important to me, because without that, you don't know who you are. You can't go through any of this work without learning what it's like when you're a kid, right? You're a baby and your arms are flailing everywhere because the nerves have not really grown to the place that they need to grow, and they're not firing in the way that they need to fire. Like, when it comes to animals in the world, giraffes jump out with those goofy legs and they start walking instantly. Yeah. We need to be coddled for another 12 months, ex utero, to just learn how to function.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we are for our entire lifespan. We have a very short lifespan, and we are essentially spiritual children for that entire lifespan. So the best thing to do is exercise those spiritual muscles, exercise learning when your egoistic intellectual mind is being a douchebag and pissing other people off and telling you to do actions that might make you marginalized in your friend group, or might make you seem unattractive to hang out with, or when your body is, desiring certain things that might seem attractive, but, they might cause you damage or others damage. There's all sorts of things that your mind and body will work against the spirit on. So really you're looking at your mind and your body and going, well, where are you guys leading me foul? Because if I can get that in balance, then I'm basically an empty cup ready to be filled up again with some really cool shit, right? Because otherwise we'd spend every day dealing with our bullshit.
Yes.
Right?
And that story is not, it's not helpful, it's not fun, it's not
it's
why,
boring, man.
It's not us. It's
traffic, kids, that stuff can be enjoyable if you're in a place of, and they call it centered for a reason.
Yeah.
It's where you center your balance point in the middle of your mind, body, and spirit. They all play a vital part in who you are, and your spirit is only one aspect of it. Mm-hmm. It's who I choose to, as strongly as I can, identify as for guiding the rest into alignment.
Yeah, just sit behind all that stuff.
Yeah.
Sit behind that window.
Surrender.
Yeah.
Surrender, yeah.
Well, how does your heart feel right now?
Fluctuated. Sometimes it's full, sometimes I'm yearning, sometimes I'm judging.
What about right now?
One of the things Greg Braden said, and I was like, I love that, is, and this is a good one for everyone to take away, when you ask yourself questions in life, there's times where you're like, oh, what do I really want? And you ask your heart. And the moment that you ask your heart, you'll get an answer that's short and quick and succinct.
Yeah.
The head will rationalize and give you a long story. The heart will say a really quick, short statement, often just one word. And it's a good technique to have, and I feel like everyone could benefit from that one.
Yeah.
So
trust yourself, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trust your heart.
Trust your heart.
It always knows. It's the closest thing to a spiritual brain that you'll ever get.
Well, I'm glad I trusted my heart and had you on the show.
Thanks,
today,
brother.
Iain. This
It's been
was
good.
really lovely. I'm glad we're new friends.
Yes.
And I appreciate you being here.
I appreciate your time too.
Thanks, brother.